Hello and welcome to our final full week of Table Talk, where we are going to finish strong with our study in James. It's been a great first quarter to this year, listening to the earliest New Testament writing. It was a wonderful, wonderful journey, and we have been definitely learning a lot, going into topics for practical Christian living, things that we have reflected, things that we've grown in. And today, this week, it will be no different. We will return to themes that have to do with our speech as Christians. Well, with that short preamble, today we are reading James 5 from verse 1 all the way to verse 12 for today. And today it's very, I don't know if it's the correct way of saying isolated, but it is solely on an aspect of our speech. MacArthur says it's truthfulness. So let's keep that in mind. So James 5 from verse 1, it says, "Come now, you rich, cry, howling over your miseries which are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have rusted, and their corrosion will be witness against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. You have stored up such treasure in the last days. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields, that which have been withheld by you, cries out against you. And the outcries of those who did the harvesting have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. You have lived luxuriously on the earth, and lived in self-indulgence, and you have fattened your hearts in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous man. He does not resist you. Therefore be patient, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. Behold, the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the soil, being patient about it, until it receives the early and late rains. You too be patient, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not groan, brothers, against one another, so that you yourself may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing right at the door. As an example, brothers, of suffering and patience, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we count those blessed who persevere. You have heard the perseverance of Job, and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. But above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, so that you may not fall under judgment. Today's article is entitled People of Our Word. Poor Christians who are being mistreated by wealthy unbelievers are not to take personal vengeance or grumble against one another. Instead, they are to patiently wait for the Lord's return to set things right, just as farmers wait for harvest, imitating the steadfastness of the prophets and Job. Such waiting does not entail doing nothing or mean that any attempt to alleviate suffering is wrong. After all, farmers continue to work their fields in various ways as they wait for their crops to mature. The point is that we are not to let our suffering turn us against others or take away our faith in our good take away our faith in our good and gracious God. In today's verse, James appends a warning about oaths to his teachings on Christian patience. Commentators differ as to why James would put this instruction here. The most likely explanation is that for Christians who are being oppressed by wealthy unbelievers would have been tempted to swear oaths that they were unlikely to be able to keep when they promised to repay debts. Whatever the case may be, James' words must guide us today. First, James cannot be forbidding all oaths, for the apostles made oaths and vows under some circumstances. Moreover, like the vow that we see in Leviticus, for example, or Numbers. Moreover, Scripture generally assumes that people should make vows. What we cannot do is swear by God's name falsely. What then is James doing? John Calvin says that James reproves those who thought they could swear with impunity, provided they adopt some circuitous expressions. I believe that's what it says. James is dealing with the same kind of thing that Jesus addresses when he calls out the Pharisees in Matthew 23. Many Pharisees had the idea that one did not really have to keep an oath if it had been sworn not in God's name, but in the name of something associated with the Lord. They developed an elaborate moral framework whereby they gave themselves permission to break their vows as long as they did not expressly use the name of God in swearing. This practice missed the point. We are not to swear oaths casually or to make them in such a way that we think we can break them with impunity. Only God can perfectly hold us accountable for keeping our promises. We ultimately speak falsely against God, thereby committing blasphemy, when we think that leaving his name out of an oath renders him unwilling or unable to hold us to account for our word. We must keep our godly promises. Let's look at some verses of enrichment, because I think that was a very appropriate comment, devotional for such a passage. Let us flip to roughly the middle portion of Numbers. Numbers 30. No, excuse me, close to the end. Matthew 30:1 and 2. Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the sons of Israel, saying, This is the word which Yahweh has commanded. If a man makes a vow to Yahweh or swears an oath to bind himself with a binding obligation, he shall not violate his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. Now, of course, this Levitical part has also vows of women or the wives of husbands, but I think we get the idea in this passage. If you'd like to investigate those Levitical laws and laws that we see in Deuteronomy and Numbers, go right ahead. But yes, it was a utter violation to break one's commitment. To break one's commitment. We also see that in Corinthians, but we won't address that at this point in time. Next one is Psalms 119:106, and that says, I have sworn and I have configured to keep your righteous I have sworn and I have confirmed to keep your righteous judgments. Just a straight up the previous verse, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I have sworn and I have confirmed to keep your righteous judgments. That's a commitment. This is a psalm that outlines a very clear commitment to do the word, to do the things that are in the law, to do what God has commanded us. That is how we ought to live. That is a faith manifesting itself in being perfected. If we go back to James 1, for example. Let's go to Matthew 5. Matthew 5 on the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5, 33, 37. And it says this. Again, you have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but you should fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool or of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. Nor shall you make the oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond that is of the evil one. A complete parallel to what James was saying. MacArthur comments that this should not be taken as a universal condemnation of oaths in all circumstances. Like, for example, I don't know if you'll say it, but we make oaths when we go to court. We make oaths when we go get married. When you commit yourself to your spouse, you're making a vow before God. Christ himself spoke under oath, and the law prescribes oaths in certain circumstances. What Christ is forbidding here is the flippant, profane, or careless use of oaths in everyday speech. In that culture, such oaths were often employed for deceptive purposes, to make the person being victimized, believing the truth was being told. The Jews would swear by heaven, by earth, by Jerusalem, or their own heads, and not by God, hoping to avoid divine judgment for their lie. But it was all in God's creation, so he drew it in and produced guilt before him, exactly as if the oath were made in his name. Jesus suggested that all of our speech should be as if we were under oath to tell the truth. Just the consequence of sin, men being liars. We really, really, really wish we could always get the truth, huh? And people even lie under oath, and well. Lastly, let's look at Hebrews 6:13. For when God made the promise to Abraham, since he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself. That's just the highest form of promise keeping. That when we look at God's promises, we see that there is nothing else but himself to whom we can trust that his promises come to fruition. God is not an anxious God. God is a sovereign God. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows all. And he is not living awaiting to see what will happen, for he has seen it all. And by that, he could not swear by anything higher but by his own standard. So when we look at his promises, we remember the immutable God who made them. Let us quickly read our application to end this video. Dr. R.C. Sproul comments, the Christian is expected to be a person whose word can be trusted. Ultimately, this is what James is telling us in today's verse. Oaths and vows are appropriate on solemn occasions, but not for everyday use. For God expects us not to need them to keep everyday promises. It is better not to swear at all than to swear an oath that we do not intend to keep. The word intend. Well, thank you for joining me this evening edition of Table Talk. Please join us next time while we continue on this big overarching theme of speech, being people of our word, but we will explore in a very interesting portion of James. I think this is the second one, where we talk about prayer. Let's see what Table Talk has to say, and let's see if we can have a little bit of a other thought if you're not familiar with MacArthur's comments. But I think there is something very important to consider in such a passage. Nevertheless, God bless you, and have a wonderful evening.